Aptoide was the best thing that ever happened to Android piracy. For years, millions of people downloaded paid games, modified versions, and blocked apps without spending a single cent, trusting only the security they imagined they had. Until the impossible happened: stolen accounts, damaged phones, and a massive hack that exposed millions of users. That's why today you'll see how the app that marked our childhood ended up reminding us that on the internet, free things are almost never safe, and that, in reality, we are the product. In the early 2010s, when Android had just been launched, few stopped to think that every app had to go through the hands and security of Google or Apple. It was convenient, yes, but it also meant losing control. If an app didn't follow the rules, it simply didn't exist for most people. So in 2009, two Portuguese engineers, Paulo Trezentos and Alvaro Pinto, decided to change that. They wanted to do something different, something where everyone could be. And so Aptoide was born, an independent app store that promised something radical and rare at that time: an open platform, without censorship or restrictions. Anyone could create their own store, upload their apps, modified or not, and share them with the world. It was a very different market from anything seen before, made up of thousands of mini-stores connected together, where there were no limits. You could install both apps outside of the official stores, and those already on the Play Store or App Store. Also, Aptoide offered something that no other store dared to do: a fairer model for developers. While Google and Apple kept 30% of the earnings, Aptoide only took 10%. The rest went straight to the creators and partners. That difference made it a refuge for those who saw the tech giants as companies charging too much just for being different. Its expansion was fast. From Portugal, Aptoide opened offices in Singapore and Shenzhen, entering markets where Android dominated. And the Play Store still didn't have so much control, since remember that at the beginning, it was AC market. For millions of users, it was a perfect opportunity. They could access older versions of apps, blocked tools, and even apps removed by Google. Aptoide's growth was on another level, but with more freedom came more disorder, more chaos. The community grew, and, with it, the legal and security gaps. Aptoide had been born as a digital utopia, a place where curiosity had no limits, the future that had been promised. But in technology, the line between freedom and chaos is always very thin. There is always a small but great gap. What began as a revolutionary idea would soon become a problem for most users. Aptoide hadn't just created an alternative to the official stores. It had opened the door to something much bigger and much more dangerous. During Android's first years, most people used the Play Store without imagining there was another option. But Aptoide changed that. It was different. It offered what everyone wanted, and even more being kids. Modified games and paid apps completely free. While other stores focused on legal and controlled software, Aptoide became the meeting point of everything forbidden. You could find unlocked premium versions, tools with hidden features, and above all, free games that actually cost money, besides the modified games. Among them was Minecraft, the title that most boosted its growth. In a time when it cost money to download and still does, Aptoide offered it for free. Free in quotes because it was actually pirated. But just that promise was enough to attract millions of users, especially kids and young people, who saw in the app an easy way to get everything without paying. On forums, communities, and YouTube channels, the word began to spread. Downloading Aptoide became typical and indispensable for anyone who had an Android device. You only needed the APK file and a few minutes to access thousands of hacked games, older versions, and apps blocked by Google. It was pure freedom, and that made it unstoppable. But what made it so popular was not only that it had modified apps. What really made it so popular was that the stores and the apps were always updated, so you never had to wait too long to get the new update of Minecraft Pocket Edition. In countries like Brazil, India, or the Philippines, where digital payments were difficult, or apps cost too much, or were very limited in the early years of the 2010s decade, Aptoide became the main store, not only because it offered free games, but because it worked without restrictions or needing an account. For many, it was the first time they could use premium apps without spending a penny. Over the years, Aptoide reached a base of more than 250 million users. It was the third biggest store in the world, even surpassing several official competitors and competing with HappyMod, its eternal rival at the time. But that success had a dark side. By allowing anyone to upload their own files, thousands of fake or manipulated apps began to appear, even from Aptoide itself, because it wasn't found on secure sites. Also, apps worked well, but others infected phones or stole personal information. The line between the legal and the dangerous became almost invisible. Aptoide tried to improve its reputation by adding security filters and trust labels, but it was already too late. That small but big problem was becoming more and more noticeable. Aptoide's success was so great that it ended up attracting both good users and people with bad intentions. The total freedom it offered was its biggest attraction, but also its weakest point. Anyone could upload apps, modify them, or create their own store inside the platform without going through strict checks. And that, sooner or later, was going to bring consequences. Over time, thousands of fake apps began to appear, games with names similar to the originals, premium versions that were actually full of ads, or modified programs with malicious code. Some worked well, but others damaged the device or stole user information without them noticing. But at least Aptoide had a little more security than a certain Happy Mod. In case you don't know what happened with Happy Mod, I left a tag above. Continuing, Aptoide tried to implement automatic filters, but it couldn't control the enormous flow of content that arrived every day. Little by little, its reputation began to fall. What was once seen as a safe and free platform began to be seen as a risk. Forums filled with warnings, and more people said they had lost accounts, passwords, or files after downloading certain apps. Still, many kept using it because it offered something no other store had, and that I've mentioned many times. But the real blow came in 2020. At the start of April, Aptoide was the victim of a massive hack that marked a before and after in its story. A group of attackers managed to breach the company's servers and get information from millions of registered users. The data included emails, IP addresses, and passwords of the accounts linked either from Google or the own accounts you could create in the app. The worst part was discovering that the passwords were stored with an outdated security method, known as SHA-1 without salt. For those who don't know, SHA-1 without salt refers to the SHA-1 hash function, used without adding a random value, salt, to the input, which in this case were the passwords, making them easy to decipher in a matter of hours. The leak was huge. More than 20 million accounts were exposed, and the information was published in dark web forums, where anyone could access it. Even my old account was exposed, and if you have Google One, you can see if your account was exposed or is floating in the dark web. The news spread quickly, and of course, Google didn't take long to take advantage of it. Play Protect began marking Aptoide as a threat, showing red warnings every time someone tried to install it. The messages said the app could damage the device or steal information, and for most users, that was enough to remove it completely. Within weeks, Aptoide lost millions of downloads, and its active base fell sharply. Many developers abandoned the platform, fearing their data had also been compromised. The damage to its reputation was so big that it became almost impossible to recover. For the first time since its creation, Aptoide went from being an almost trustworthy alternative to becoming an example of what could go wrong in an unofficial store. Paradoxically, the problem was not just the hack, but what it represented. For years, Aptoide had defended the idea of total freedom, but that same freedom ended up opening the doors to its own collapse. The hackers didn't just breach its system, they reaffirmed that it is not safe to install things from unofficial sources, and even less so from unofficial stores. From that moment, the name Aptoide was marked by distrust, and although it would keep working, nothing would ever be the same. But is it still working in 2025? After the 2020 hack, many thought that Aptoide would not recover. Its reputation had been destroyed, and for a large part of users, the name Aptoide already meant danger. But the company decided not to give up. In the following years, it began to rebuild from scratch. It hired security specialists from across Europe and updated its infrastructure completely. It created a stricter verification system, implemented external audits, and began working with blockchain technology to better control the origin of the apps. It was an attempt to clean its image and once again be seen as a safe platform. Unlike other alternative stores that disappeared over time, Aptoide managed to survive. And not only that, in 2024, it surprised the world with an unexpected announcement. Taking advantage of the changes in the new Digital Markets Act in Europe, Aptoide became one of the first alternative stores authorized to operate within iOS. It was a risky but smart move. The company understood that it could no longer keep depending on the users who were looking for pirated apps. Instead, it changed its focus to independent developers and companies looking for alternatives to Google's and Apple's policies. The result was a slow but steady rebirth. By 2025, Aptoide once again had presence in several markets and positioned itself as one of the most used platforms in Brazil, India, and Southeast Asia, although with a different purpose. It no longer promised pirated apps or modified versions. Now it presented itself as a free store, but regulated, a kind of open source store where users still had control, but without risking their security. Today, Aptoide survives as a kind of reminder, an example of what can happen when a good idea is taken by excess of freedom. In the end, Aptoide is the story of an application that tried to change the rules and ended up facing the consequences of everything it offered. A story that teaches something important. Not everything that seems free is safe, and not everything that is free is really free. Because when something is free, you are usually the product. Trusting unknown apps or unofficial stores may seem harmless, but we never know who is behind and what they can do with our information. And sometimes, a single click is enough to put at risk much more than your phone, your privacy, your data, and your peace of mind. Because on the internet, freedom without caution can be the most expensive mistake of all.